Ronaldo's talent ignites at United. Speed, skill, and a star rising. Picture a teenager stepping onto Old Trafford's sacred turf, his boots still new, his frame still slight, a boy who'd stumbled through his first months in a foreign land, battered by doubt and the bruising weight of expectation. It's late 2003, and Cristiano Ronaldo, 18, fresh from Madeira's dust and sporting Lisbon's gentle pitches, is no stranger to struggle at Manchester United. The Premier League has tested him hard. Its language eludes him, its physicality flattens him, its fans mock his flair as too flashy. But beneath the stumbles, something simmers, a fire that refuses to fade, a talent too bright to bury. In those early months of the 2003 to 2004 season, amid the jeers and falls, Ronaldo begins to show it. A speed that cuts like lightning, a technique that dances past giants, a shot that stings from distance. Gifts honed on Lisbon streets, now sharpened in Manchester's crucible. By May 22, 2004, at Cardiff's Millennium Stadium, that fire erupts fully in the FA Cup final against Millwall. A 3-0 win where he leaps, heads the opener, and silences the skeptic with a glimpse of the titan he'll become. This isn't just survival. It's a spark igniting, a boy shedding his frailty to reveal a brilliance that will one day rule the world. Through technique, pace, and a will that bends but never breaks, Ronaldo's talent explodes at United. Not in a single flash, but in a slow, searing burn that lights his path from doubt to destiny. Imagine him in those early training sessions at Carrington, the rain soaking his red kit, his breath fogging in the Manchester chill. He's still the kid who'd arrived in August 2003, signed for £12.24 million, handed the number 7 shirt, a legacy of best Cantona, Beckham. That weighs heavier than the mud on his boots. His debut against Bolton Wanderers flashes promise. 30 minutes of quick feet and daring runs. But the weeks after drown him in doubt. Too flashy, the fans grumble as he dribbles into walls. Too weak, they sneer as tackles send him sprawling. I felt it, he'd say later, voice low, like they didn't see me. But he doesn't shrink, he runs. Late at night, when the others head home, he stays, kicking against walls, his boots thudding a rhythm only he hears. I'd train, he'd recall, till my legs screamed. That's where it begins. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, where a boy from nowhere builds something no one can ignore. His speed is the first to catch eyes, a blur that turns defenders into statues. Back at Sporting, he'd outrun kids with a rag ball, his legs a flicker of defiance against poverty's pull. At United, it's more a weapon honed by desperation, unleashed in a league that demands it. Take October 2003, against Birmingham City at St. Andrews. He comes off the bench, picks up a loose ball, and bolts left, right, a streak of red cutting through blue shirts. He's fast. A fan mutters, too fast. The move doesn't score. His cross sails wide, but heads turn. I'd run. He'd say, because I could. Against Portsmouth in November, it's sharper. He wins a free kick, steps up, and fires. A curling rocket that kisses the net. His first United goal. I felt alive, he grinned, like they saw me then. That pace, raw, reckless, starts to carve his name into the Red Sea of Old Trafford, a whisper growing louder with every sprint. Then there's his technique, a dance of feet that defies the Premier League's brutish pulse. He'd learned it on Madeira's cracked streets, weaving through boys with flicks and twists, a ball his only friend. At Sporting, it dazzled, step-overs that left defenders dizzy, turns that spun them into knots. In England, it's a risk. Too much flair invites punishment, but he doesn't stop. It's me, he'd say how I play. Against Newcastle in September, he tries it. A double step over, a shimmy past Alan Shearer, who lunges and misses. The ball rolls away, but the crowd gasps. Something's there, something rare. He'd dance. Gary Neville would laugh later. And we'd groan, but you couldn't look away. By December, against Southampton, it clicks. He picks up a pass, fakes left, cuts right, 2 defenders stumble, and drills a low shot that grazes the post. Close, Ferguson nods from the sideline, getting there. That technique, wild, unpolished, starts to bend the game. a flicker of Lisbon blooming in Manchester's grey. His shooting, too, begins to bite, a power that belies his skinny frame. At Sporting, he'd hammer goals with a ragball, his foot a cannon no keeper could tame. At United, it's rawer, less sure, but growing. That Portsmouth free kick in November isn't luck. It's instinct, a whip of his laces that screams past David James. I'd hit it, he'd say, and feel it strong. Against Tottenham in January 2004, he tries again, a long-range snap from 25 yards, dipping, forcing a save that rattles the bar. He's got a shot. Scholes mutters, a rare nod from the quiet maestro. The goals don't pour, 6 in 40 games that season, but each one lands harder, a promise etched in leather. I'd miss, he'd admit, but I'd learn. Every strike, curled, blasted, fierce, builds him, a boy who'd kicked against walls now kicking through them. The doubters don't vanish. They linger, their voices sharp after every stumble. Too flashy, they chant when he over-dribbles against Arsenal, Vieira flattening him like a fly. Too frail, they sneer as Chelsea's brutes bully him in a 3-0 loss. I'd hear it, he'd say, everywhere. But he doesn't bow, he fights. Training becomes his forge. He lifts weights, his arms trembling, his chest filling. He runs sprints till his lungs burn, his legs stealing. I get stronger, he'd vow had to. By spring, his body shifts. 5 feet 11 inches stretches to 6 feet 1 inch. 150 pounds creeps to 165, and his game shifts too. He'd take hits, Ferguson notes, and get up. Against Aston Villa in April, he bursts through, shrugs off a shoulder, and slots a goal, cool, clean as sign. That's it, a fan whispers he's learning. Then comes May 22nd, 2004. The FA Cup final against Millwall at Cardiff's Millennium Stadium. A stage where United expects silver, and Ronaldo, at 19, delivers gold. He's no longer the shaky kid from August. He's a spark turned flame, his season of struggle now fuel. The game starts tight. Millwall, scrappy underdogs, press hard, but Ronaldo moves, a shadow in red. I felt good, he'd say, ready. At 44 minutes, it happens. Gary Neville off the cross, high and curling, and Ronaldo leaps, higher than anyone, his neck snapping like a whip. The ball rockets off his forehead, past keeper Andy Marshall, into the net, 1-0. I flew, he'd grin, and it went in. The stadium erupts, 73,000 roar, and he runs, arms wide, chest out, a boy tasting triumph. That's him, Ferguson beams, that's the lad. Ruud van Nistelrooy adds 2 more, 3-0, but Ronaldo's header is the spark, the moment doubters pause, the moment fans chant Ronaldo instead of who. That goal isn't just a score, it's a statement. I'd struggled, he'd say, but I'd fight. His speed sets it up, a run down the right, pulling defenders wide, opening space. His technique holds it, a soft first touch under pressure, a glance to spot Neville. His power seals it. A header number 19-year-old should muster, precise and fierce. He's got it all, Scholes says later, just needs time. The FA Cup shines, United's 9th, but Ronaldo's shine is brighter, a glimpse of what's coming. I knew then, he'd reflect, I could do this. The trophy lifts his hands, his first with United, and the weight of number 7 feels lighter. Not gone, but bearable. This isn't the end, it's a dawn. The 2003-2004 season ends with 6 goals. Modest for a legend to be, but each one builds him. Portsmouth's free kick, Villa's finish, Millwall's header. His speed turns heads, runs that shred defenses, leaving Neville panting. He's a rocket. His technique twists minds, step-overs that dazzle, fakes that fool, a flair that's no longer just flash. His shots sting, distant strikes that force gasps, power that promises more. I grow, he'd say every day. The fans shift, jeers soften to cheers. Too flashy fades to he's ours. Ferguson sees it, a diamond, he calls him, rough but cutting. Keen, stern as stone, nods once enough. Those early months aren't easy, they're brutal. Language stumbles, his English creeps from yes to sentences, still broken but bold. Tackles bruise, his shin scar, his will scars deeper. Doubts linger, Fans still compare, not Beckham, but fewer now. I'd hear them, he'd say, and keep going. He trains, weights pile on, runs stretch long, his body a canvas of grit. I'd adapt, he'd vow, or I die. He doesn't die. He thrives, a boy who'd outrun poverty, now outrunning scorn. Against Charlton in March, he skips past two, fires wide, but the crowd claps, a shift. He's learning, they say, he's ours. By Millwall, it's clear, Ronaldo's talent isn't just promise, it's power. I'd felt small, he'd confess, but not then. That header, his fifth goal, proves it. Speed to stretch, technique to hold, strength to finish. I'd show them, he'd say me, the FA Cup final isn't his peak. It's his pledge, a marker in a season of stumbles that ends in shine. I wasn't there yet, he'd admit, but I was close. Old Trafford starts to hum his name. Not loud, not yet, but steady, a chant building from a whisper. He's special. A fan says, you'll see. This Ronaldo isn't the king of hat tricks or golden boots. Not yet. He's 19, a spark in a storm, his talent a flame flickering through Manchester's rain. I'd fight, he'd say always. Speed that blinds, technique that bends, shots that boom, gifts from Sporting, now United's own. The FA Cup lifts high, his hands grip tight, and the doubters quiet. Not gone, but hushed. I'd prove it, he'd vow, not now, but soon. From Madeira's dust to Lisbon's turf. Now Manchester's roar. Ronaldo's talent explodes. Not fully, not yet, but enough to light the dark. A star rising slow, steady, unstoppable.